The dead among the Bantus have always arisen, but only once and on some rigid condition, not in flesh, but ancestrally, in an incarnated state, following specific burial rituals. Time for facts to triumph over blind heretical faith. In the religions of Africa, life does not end with death, but continues in another realm. The concepts of life and death are not mutually exclusive concepts, and there are no clear dividing lines between them. Read more from this website. Death and funeral rituals are intensely entrenched in our cultural traditions that have guided our view of existence after death and the role of the deceased ancestor. These traditional themes survive in Africa and among people of African descent all over the earth, in the Caribbean, in the Americas. In them, there is no physical resurrection of the flesh now or in the future, but reincarnation if judged and deemed well. There is no proof that Jesus rose other than faith. What if there is no resurrection? The issue here revealed already showed that in that time there was already debate, and this story was concocted. In 1 Corinthians 15:12, we read, "Now if Christ is proclaimed as raised from the dead, how can some of you say there is no resurrection of the dead?" It's true, there is no resurrection of the dead. Depends with what you mean by resurrection. If it is of the flesh, if it is walking on the earth again after death, and you say it's a resurrection, it's not. There's nothing like that. There has never been a resurrection of the dead. No, ever. Abraham is dead, never came back. All our kings are dead, never came back. Even Jesus died, is nowhere to be found. You can't show me his bones and his grave. In Luke 24:34, they were saying to each other, "The Lord really has risen. He appeared to Simon." So they were surprised, because it's an impossibility. But without the evidence of a physical body or bones, and with an empty tomb, many questions come up. Either he was not dead, or his body was buried elsewhere, or there was never Jesus. Actually, the answer that he ascended into heaven is proof that he was a ghost or a spirit. African traditional religion has more proof on resurrection, because while we believe the dead are living, we have their bones, their graves, they are with us. Also, their spirits are alive. Lastly, but not least, to Christianity and to those that believe in a resurrection, why did Jesus rush back to heaven when he had defeated death, conquered Satan, triumphed over everything? Why? Because it is a concocted story taken from our book Perut M. Heru. This story that has caused people to observe Easter came from Africa. The Roman Illusion, Volume 1, Christianity Exposed, a book you can get written by Amen Mahatra. You can get it from Amazon. Teaches us also that black Africans abandoned their rich cultural traditions and accepted Christianity. They found out that the spiritual system, so-called New Roman religion, was preached by Mark, was so similar to the Ausari, Asisu, and Horesu. So they just transferred their allegiance from their ancestors to another ancestor, a European ancestor. That's what you have done. This is what happened. Aspects of Ausari and Horesu were used to manufacture the mythological Messiah, Jesus Christ. There is a proof. So you are still worshipping an ancestor, but you are worshipping a wrong ancestor. You are already resurrecting a wrong ancestor, a European ancestor, instead of your own African ancestor. So Christianity is still, all Christians are ancestor worshippers. The only difference is they have a genealogy and an ancestor given to them by Rome, and theirs removed, substitution or transubstantiation. So it's clear. Comparison of the lives of Ausari, our black African Afro ancestor, and Hore and Yeshua. That's what we are going to show you. It comes from this book, the book of coming forth by day. What's coming forth by day? It is your spirit. It is your soul coming forth after death from life, this current physical life. Ausari is recognized by the title Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, and the Prince of Princes in the hymn to Ausari Unefera from the Papyrus of Ani. There is the book. Proof. There is the book of coming forth by day. Over 1,000 years later, Jesus is referred to as Lord of Lords and King of Kings. Borrowed and stolen from our ancestral religion, ancestral faith. That's why he's Lord of Lords and King of Kings. He's dead, but he's still Lord of Lords. He's a spirit. He is your spirit that is guiding you. He is your ancestor. You have removed your ancestors and put other ancestors in place. Someone has done it for you, and you follow it and you believe it. Ausari suffered. He was killed and then resurrected from the realm of the dead after 3 days in the form of God Heru. That's spirit possession, ancestral spirit possession. There it is. There are the scriptures, the verses. So when they say Horesu is risen, that's what they are saying. Spirit possession. That's why you have to have that spirit renewed annually in you. Because without that, that spirit doesn't have power or energy. It's you who renews it. Over 2,000 years later in the Christian Judaic version, which was plagiarized from Hermeti, it is documented in Corinthians that Jesus suffered, was crucified and resurrected or risen from the grave. Which grave? His body. That's the grave. His spirit. So they also said his side was pierced and that he suffered, which they borrowed from Ausari's side was pierced, and from the wound his vital life force flowed out. He was speared. Spell 74, coffin text, come that we may make a dam in his side. There drips the efflux which he has issued from his spirit. Over 2,000 years later in the Christian Judaic version, that was plagiarized from Hemet, Africa. It is documented in John 1934, 1st century. In the New Testament Bible, that one of the soldiers pierced the side of Jesus, and from this wound, blood and water flowed. Ausari resurrected from the realm of the dead. The same story. Utterance 676, pyramid text. Shake off thy dust, untie thy bandages. The tomb is open for thee. That is the story. And when they wrote, Mary Magdalene and all the women who went to the grave, to the tomb, they found an open tomb. Same story. So the open tomb theme or theory was borrowed from ancient Hemet. There is the proof. Horace was born a virgin. Jesus was born a virgin. There are the proofs, the verses that I'm showing there are proofs. Utterance 374, verse 659c. Thou hast no father among men who conceived thee. Over 2,000 years later, you read the story about Jesus and many believe it. Spell 62, coffin text. Here it says, I cause you to cross the waterway of the sky windows, to cross the lake, and to traverse the sea with the sole of thy foot, as if you were performing on land. Jesus walked on the water. That's the story they borrowed. Matthew 14:22. Jesus walked on water. That's the story. The wise men, those with wisdom and understanding, came to see Horesu. Pyramid text, utterance 676, verse 2017a. In Matthew 2:1, there is the story. Again, borrowed. Horesu is regarded as both God and man. Jesus is regarded both as God and man. The same story, just change of names by the Romans, by the Greeks, or was copied. Horesu blessed and broke bread. Utterance 491, pyramid text 2400 before common era. This verse is given. Horesu gives me this bread, his bread with which he has satisfied his subjects, and I eat of it with them. Same story with Jesus, borrowed. So you can, even the good shepherd or was borrowed. So what makes you resist and refuse that the resurrection was also borrowed? Because the resurrection that you believe today is a bastardization of the African concept of the afterlife. You can go to this website, Encyclopedia of Death. and this website and read about the African religions, their concept of afterlife or death. Nearly all African peoples have a belief in a singular supreme being, the creator of the earth and all things. We have a book that explains it thoroughly and clearly. Although the dead are believed to be somehow nearer to the supreme being than the living, the original state of bliss in the distant past expressed in creation myth is not restored in the afterlife because of that purification and because of that recycle which we call reincarnation. Among many African peoples is the widespread belief that witches and sorcerers are not admitted to the spirit world, and therefore they are refused proper burial. Sometimes their bodies are subjected to actions that would make such burial impossible, such as burning, chopping up, and feeding them to hyenas. Among the Africans, to be cut off from the community of the ancestors in death is the nearest equivalent of hell. So many of us are going to hell. Burial and mourning customs. Death in African religion is one of the last transitional stages of life requiring passage rites, and this too takes a long time to complete. The deceased must be detached from the living and makes a smooth transition to the next life as smooth as possible. That's why there are rituals. That's why there are burial and customs associated with that. You can read more from this website. It is a spirit they talk about. That is the ritual they're speaking of. It is the ritual of transition in death. This is where Christianity has triumphed. A great miracle indeed, based on African traditional mysteries. Only difference is the type of resurrection. There is not even one African who dies and does not resurrect in a spiritual resurrection, known as uvuko, ufufuyo, umbuiso, or return, or chenuro. These are needed. These okay. Resurrection or anastasis of what? A human is a soul in flesh. Therefore, death is birth into the spiritual realm by that soul coming forth by day. Why would there be a resurrection of what? We shall all die once, and after that we resurrect into the other realm or born into the other realm. But there will never be ukuvuselelwa kwabafileyo emathuneni, ngeke kwenzeke. Borrowed concept. There was no resurrection. We have shown why. Prior to that, we have seen that the story that forms the corpus of the New Testament existed in Africa thousands and thousands of years before Jesus was on earth. All involves the mystery, which is the explanation of the soul's life in flesh on earth and when it comes forth by day. If we live a life of Maat, we ascend. If not, his fate takes us back in unending reincarnations. That's the truth. That's the fear. Subscribe to our channel, Hamiti Hebrew Ethics. This Christian Rabbi Elem Tumizulu. This is our email. May you avoid being deceived. Thank you. Goodbye.